fellow coders and friends, and welcome back to the Basics of Programming tutorial. This is Vari. Last video we covered our conditional operators and our selection statements, selection structures, if statements, and switch cases. In this video I'm going to cover our loop structures. Loop structures are almost like our selection statements, except with selection statements, the statements that are processed after our conditionals are checked, they're only done once, and then we get out of the structure, and then control is given to the next statement right after our selection structure. Now, with loops, they go a varying amount of times. They can go 0 times, they can go an infinite amount of times, which is not good. You want to avoid those. And then they can go however many times that you need, depending on the logic of your code. Now, there are two types of loop structures. There is our for loops, which is our counting loop structures. And then we have our while loop, which is our sentinel loop structure. Now, while loops can be used as a counting loop structure, though common practice is that they are used for sentinel loops. So while something is true, do something. Now, obviously you could use that as a counting loop structure, but we already have that. We have a for loop for that. So while loops, try and use them as sentinel loop structures. Now, what a sentinel loop means is like while true, right? That's a sentinel structure because we have our true value here. Now, it's a bad sentinel loop value, or a sentinel loop definition, because it'll never stop. While true is always going to be true, and it's never going to end. So we don't want to do that, but that's just how the basics of what a sentinel loop looks like. What you would usually be doing is have like a function that returns either true or false, and while that function keeps returning true, keep going, and then eventually your function will hopefully be returning false at some point, and then the loop will end, and then we shift control back to the next statement after our while loop. So our counting loop looks like this. For your variable name that will be used within the for loop, in range 0 to 10. Now what this is saying is while, I shouldn't say while, for our variable here, var, in the range of values 0 to 10 exclusive. So once this hits 10, the for loop is going to exit and var will never actually be 10. But it will be 0 to 9. I'll show you that. Zero to 9. That's basically how a counting loop structure is. Very basic. There are many different things that you can do with a for loop. It doesn't have to be a one incrementation every iteration of the loop. It could be 2, it could be 3. Like I believe range in Python also has like a third variable to tell it how many times to go. So this would be every even number between 0 and 10. So it should be 2 to 8. Or 0 to 8. Yep. So there's your for loop. I showed you what the while loop looked like pretty much. While something is true, do something, right? Now, there are two types of while loops, however. This is your regular while loop. And there's also a do while loop. Now, Python doesn't have a do while loop, so I won't be able to actually run any code. However, I'll show you anyway because they exist. So your do while loop is pretty much the same as a while loop, except your while loop, your regular while loop, may not run at all, depending on the logic of your code, because the conditional check is always checked first. Once you hit your while loop structure, it'll check your condition, and then if your condition is true, it'll do something. If it doesn't, it'll completely ignore everything and shift control to the next statement. With do whiles, everything underneath the do, all of your statements that are between your do keyword and your while keyword, they are done at least once. When your code hits your do while structure, it'll run your statements, and then it'll check your condition. Pretty cool, right? Now, with loops, with any type of loops, you have to be careful, even with for loops, even though it's kind of hard to have a for loop defined that'll go forever, it is still possible. Now, you don't want infinite loops. Trust me, they seem silly, they are silly, but they're not good. Because once your program hits a while loop that goes forever, or just any infinite loop, that's exactly what it's going to do. It's going to go forever and ever and ever and ever, never going to stop, and then you have to close your program, and basically your program, it doesn't crash, doesn't technically crash, but it might as well have crashed, because it's not going to do anything. It's just going to continuously iterating over itself, doing whatever it's doing, and it'll never end, and then that's just bad programming. Just don't do it. Don't have infinite loops in your code. If you run into an infinite loop in your code, fix it. No matter what, fix it. Don't be like, oh, it only becomes an infinite loop if we do this, so just don't do that. No. You never want to have the possibility of an infinite loop in your code. If you ever run into one, fix it. Well, I guess that is it for loop structures. Next video, I'm going to cover recursion, which is a very, very powerful tool that you can be using. It's kind of like a loop, except it's using your functions. I will get into it more in the next video, but basically it's making a loop using a certain function definition. Trust me, it's cool. It's very, very cool. And anyway, thank you for watching. If you like these videos and want to learn more about coding, the basics, and language-specific things, subscribe so you can get notifications on when I post. And I love you guys. I will see you guys later. Goodbye.